Hello and welcome to this video and to another sort of book tag one. I had a lot of fun doing the anti-TBR tag, which I'll link up here if you're interested. That might have been the wrong side because I always get confused by mirror images. It's up there. That I thought I may as well come back and do another one. So I'm doing the reading taste tag today. Not that anyone has actually tagged me in any of these videos, but they sound fun, so I thought I would do them. And this is, as it says on the tin, all about my reading taste. So I've got my Squishy Rex notebook with me again, with the questions in it, so if I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at this time. And I thought we'd work our way through it. So the first question is, describe your reading taste in one sentence. Again, like the anti-TBR tag, I haven't really prepared anything for this, so you're gonna have to bear with me. Obviously I gave it a little bit of thought when I wrote down the questions a couple of weeks ago, but since then I've not really given it any thought. But my reading taste in one sentence, I would say relatively varied, and if it's cheap or free, I'll give it a go. The reason I say that, and this goes into the second question, which is to elaborate more on your taste. So it's sort of the genres, the age, the length of book, publishing year, where it's hyped, all of that kind of stuff. And the reason I say it's relatively varied is because I do read most genres, but not all genres. Typically I read contemporary, probably romance contemporary as well. I read quite a few thrillers and mysteries and that kind of thing. What have I got on my shelves here? Bit of non-fiction, bit of literary fiction. And yeah, essentially if someone gives me a book or I find it cheap and it sounds vaguely interesting, even if it's not in my typical genre, I give it a go. Things I don't gravitate towards: horror, not really my thing, although a dark thriller or like a gory thriller I'm quite on board with. But anything that like actively markets itself as a horror, not my thing. I also don't really do any sort of sci-fi. If it says it's set in space, I don't think it's going to be really something I'm going to want to read. But then if you gave it to me and you told me it was great, I'd probably give it a go anyway. So that's what I mean. In terms of age, I'm very much adult in my age range, although I have been dipping my toes a bit more into middle grade this year. And I do read the odd YA new adult as well. But largely my reading is adult. That's probably because I'm in my 30s, so I don't really relate as well to a teenager as I perhaps once did. The length, again, I don't, say no to a book if it's too short or too long. What I dislike in a book is long chapters, but you're never going to know that just from the blurb and things like that, and I don't actively seek it out or anything. I don't look at it before I get a book, whether they've got long chapters. So I think largely most of the stuff I read is like between that 300-400 page mark. But again, it's not something I particularly pay attention to. The year that it's published, I'm pretty much always like behind the curve. I like to wait for a book to be out in paperback firstly, because I'm not a big hardback reader, so that delays me somewhat. And then I'm also a cheapskate, as you've probably gathered, so I wait until things are cheaper. So supermarkets, the works, that's like my favourite place because books are typically under £5, which is what I aim for. So if I look at my if I look at my core pile, so most of the books that I've read this year are from either 2021 or 2020. I mean, basically from 2018 to 2021 is sort of my year band at the moment, so that sort of tells you how delayed I am with books. Which means that yes, I do read hyped books, but I read them considerably later than everybody else, which is good and bad. Obviously I go into things with preconceived like ideas of what I think of them, but I try and go in with an open mind and just give it a go, see if it, because my taste and other people's tastes are different. That's just the way taste works. It's all very subjective. So yeah, that's sort of the categories of my reading. Nothing too untoward or out there, really. The next one is a few books that represent your taste. Now that's quite difficult. For me, I don't give a lot of 5 stars. I know for a lot of readers that would probably seem not great and like you don't enjoy what you're reading. I do. I enjoy a lot of what I'm reading, but a 5-star for me has got to be a book that completely grips me, for starters, that I really enjoy the story and there's no like even little niggly bits to it. Maybe I'm too picky, I don't know. And normally it's a book that has like really surprised me. So the only 5 stars so far that I've given this year is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And no, that isn't the best piece of literary fiction there's ever been, but there was something about that book that really gripped me. I couldn't put it down, and it did surprise me because I went in going, well, it's just going to be your typical rom-com. It's going to be an easy read that it won't whatever, but it just, as I said, really gripped me and I completely fell in love with that book. Other ones, there's a whole heap of thing about, you know, right book, right time, and A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. That is one that comes to mind for that. I read that last June, around the time that I was getting married. There's a lot of teenage me in the main character of that book, and just that and the whole me getting married and, you know, life is great and love and yada yada yada, they just really connected, and that book now holds like a special place in my heart just because of that. And again, I'm not saying it's the best book ever written, although it is very good. It's just one of those things. Other books that, if you'd ask me like what's my favourite book that might represent my reading taste, are The One by John Mars and Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Again, went into these books not really knowing much and absolutely adored them. They're ones that I would recommend to people. Both the ones that I haven't actually reread but would like to. I'm not sure with Gone Girl whether knowing the twist would mean that it wasn't quite as good, but that's a little aside. But yeah, so there are 4 books that possibly represent my reading taste. I mean, I struggle to know what my reading taste is. I think I'm in a very odd position with it at the moment, in that I need variety. I can't just read one type of book consistently. I might have a month where I read a lot of the same genre or type of book, but then I'll have to read something completely different at another point. So yeah, I hope that helped. And then the next one is a book or books that you didn't enjoy that you thought would be like brilliant because you thought it was like your reading taste. The same way I don't rate many books 5 stars, I also don't rate many books particularly low. And there's 2 that come to mind for this, and I don't know whether I went into them thinking, well, I did, I suppose. The first one is The Secret Commonwealth, I think it's called. It's the second in the Book of Dust series by Philip Pullman. I really enjoyed his Dark Materials and The Belle Sauvage, or The Belle Sausage. I love that world. I like Lyra. I just really enjoy that sort of alternative Oxford and the process of all of that. So The Secret Commonwealth was one that I was really excited to read because it was a continuation of a series that I really like and a world that I really like and stuff like that. But I did not like this book at all. The bits that I like about the others weren't there. Lyra was irritating as hell, and it just felt like a 400-page filler book, and I was increasingly and incredibly disappointed with it. So that's probably one that I thought I was going to love and didn't. And the other is on a similar vein. I thought I would really enjoy The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. This one didn't have quite the negative impact that The Secret Commonwealth did. I did like seeing how the Hunger Games came to be, but there was more to that book that I didn't like than I did. And again, I thought I was going to really enjoy that because I, again, really like the Hunger Games series, and I thought a prequel to that about President Snow was going to be something that was well up my street, and it didn't quite get there. A book that you enjoyed that like surprised you because it didn't seem to be part of your normal reading taste. So again, there's two books that come to mind for that question. The first is Dear Mrs. Bird by A.J. Pierce. I don't normally read historical fiction. It's not something that particularly interests me, and reading the back of that book, I was like, sure. My mum had it. It was, here's a good example, it was going free, so I thought I would give it a go. And I really liked it, so much so that I have the sequel on my shelf here to read. It's another one of those ones that surprised me because it doesn't really, I'm not that interested in the Blitz or that sort of World War II piece. The whole agony aunt aspect is probably the reason I actually read it. It's sort of the only thing drawing me in, but I just thought it was really well done, and again, surprised me how much I did enjoy it when it isn't something I would typically go for, which then has made me go, you know, not completely shut down all historical fiction, because you never know, there might be something that I like. And then the other one is a non-fiction, so it's This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. I do dabble in a bit of non-fiction, but not often, and normally I'm interested in the subject to a certain extent, or it's a memoir, and they never rate particularly highly in my, you know, they're not going to show up often on my top reads of the year. But that one did, because again, it was witty, it was informative, it was heart-wrenching, and just a perspective that I hadn't heard before on that, and written in such an accessible and easy manner as well. So those are probably the two that spring to my mind straight away of books that I gave a go, but I wasn't 100% sure they were going to be my thing. And I'm really glad I did, because they were really good, and this is why I like to be a bit broader in what I read. The next is a booktuber with similar taste to me. As hard, a lot of the books I read are probably books that have been read on BookTube, but the ones that I really like aren't often the ones that they really like. So it's hard. I'd say they don't necessarily have the, you know, most in common with my taste, but they're the ones I probably get my most of my recommendations from. And that's Chloe reads books. She often picks up thrillers or YA books, particularly, that I end up adding to a list of books that I'd like to read because they just sound interesting. So probably her. What Victoria read, if I'm looking for more of that sort of literary fiction, what I would class, you know, harder reading, something that would challenge me a bit more, I get sort of recommendations from her. And then Rachel Kerris is very much the contemporary romance aspect, and I get a lot of recommendations from her. So I wouldn't say that they have the same reading taste as I do, but certainly I obviously have similarities, otherwise books that they read wouldn't interest me at all. So probably those three. And then the last question on my reading taste is, has it always been this way or has it changed? It's probably changed. As a teenager, early adult, I probably only stuck to that contemporary romance genre. in whatever form it takes in, you know, your sort of late middle grade, YA, early adult, new adult aspect. So it's definitely broadened because obviously I love a thriller. I would never have even thought about going to literary fiction because I just thought it would have gone over my head, but there's been books of that I've enjoyed. Non-fiction again is not a genre that I would have even ventured into, other than maybe the biography of like my favourite person or whatever, actor or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely broadened over time, and as I said, I don't know whether that's just because I'm more open to it or because I don't really know my reading taste very well, so I just give everything a go, or what. But the things that I like, that probably hasn't changed too much, as in I like to be surprised by a book. I like to be completely like enthralled by it and not want to put it down, and I like to have some sort of connection with the character, but that there's still a good plot driving it along and it's not slow and like drawing out and stuff. So that probably hasn't changed, but what I'm reading probably has. And also, you know, as I've got older, I've read less of the YA stuff and more of the adult stuff. So that's inevitable. It just happens with age, I think, because you tend to read what you can relate to, I would have, or at least what you can learn from. That's all the questions. It does then say to tag people. As I wasn't tagged, I'm not going to do that. So if you've seen this video and you think it sounds fun, please feel free to do it. And yeah, if you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!